I'm very happy to present Suzanne Tucker, physical therapist, parent educator, and founder of Generation Mindful. Welcome, Suzanne.
Hi, Devin. Hi, everyone out there. I'm so glad to be here.
I would love to start with you telling us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, well, you gave a little bit of my professional credentials, but we left one off, which is mom of four, which is my highest degree when it comes to talking about the things we're about to talk about. So I've been a physical therapist for 25 years with a focus on attachment. And what I'm really passionate about is bringing Eastern and Western medicine together. So holistic health and wellness. And what I found in my journey of motherhood is that a lot of that goes back to the science of attachment and connection. Connecting not only to my children, which seems like a natural, but to myself, actually. To myself in this moment. And when I'm able to do that, it's like I tap into a superpower of being with what is, which is a great thing to be able to do as a parent. So my husband and I own a holistic health center, and I've been teaching mindful parenting classes and things like baby massage for decades. And a couple years ago, I started Generation Mindful to take this approach more practically and playfully into everyday life, where I saw myself struggling and where I saw my families that I was working with and even the educators I was working with struggling, was not embracing the ideas behind mindful, conscious, positive parenting or discipline. Everybody loves it. When you know the science, you know it's all based on love and mindfulness. Everybody's down with that. Where we struggle are the practical, playful applications. And so that became my mission, to take the science and bring it into our skill set very playfully with no guilt. That is my big distinction.
I love it. With no guilt, that's so important.
Yeah, it's a big one. People say, what is mindfulness? And I say it's, being present to the moment with joy and ease. And everybody forgets the last two components, the joy and the ease. And you know what? If you are someone who strives to be mindful, I think you might understand what I'm talking about. Research says we tend to beat ourselves up when our awareness goes up and our education goes up. And, we start having the science and the philosophies, the lights go on and we can look around and say, wow, it's awful messy in this room. And I want to make sure that people understand that the moment that you notice you're in a moment of non-mindfulness is a mindful moment. It's actually something to celebrate. And we're not doing that. We're like beating ourselves up. And that doesn't help the chemistry of the learning of the brain. So I'm really about the brain science. It's so interesting and helpful, but it's taking it into everyday life, not only for our children, but for where it starts, which is right here for us as adults.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. And the thing is that awareness, I believe, is really the first step to change and transformation. That just to cultivate that awareness is such a huge step, because if we're not aware, then we aren't even sure where to start to find a way forward. So as a coach, I'm so big on awareness because it truly is the first step. It's like awareness is what opens the door to everything else.
It's true. And where does awareness happen? But in the body, through the body. And so our focus as a physical therapist, I'm really interested in the sensory body, the feeling body, and what's happening in our emotive body, and then in our actual physical sensory body. And actually that can be a portal into the emotive body, right? So if we can get in our physical body, we can get closer to the emotive body. And that is elusive for many of us as adults who were taught either be seen, not heard, or I'll give you something to cry about, or don't be a baby, or, any of those things. Whining is definitely frowned upon in our culture, and yet it's a sort of elevated form of crying that's very misunderstood, as you know, in the toddler years. But if we can learn to see it as a flag, as a red flag, and say, ooh, here is something I want to have my attention on and get underneath, everything shifts. And what you said was so powerful. It starts with what? Awareness. Not only awareness of our little people, but what's going on in my body when I'm aware that you're whining or you're tired or you missed your nap and I'm in the middle of Target and I'm making the choice, do I abandon my cart and run for it, or do I try to squeak out another 5 minutes and get this thing checked out?
Oh, that's such a great analogy. I love that. I love that.
We've all been there, yes.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. And so I'd love to take us into the idea of the calming corner. And I'd love for you to talk about, so what is this calming corner?
Yes. So Generation Mindful created the Time In Toolkit. And my idea there was to take everything I was doing in coaching. It would take me 3 coaching sessions to work with young families on how to nurture social emotional skills in playful ways. And I was sending them a lot of printables and I was giving them a lot of coaching. And I realized I was having the same conversation over and over, and that I could take it all together and put it in a kit. And the kit has 9 elements. It comes with printables, but it also comes with these beautiful color posters that literally, and it comes with little stickies. You just stick them on the wall. You don't even need to frame them. And it comes with a card game that nurtures mindfulness and lots of other components, including some video instruction and then a lot of manual instruction. So it's kind of like a mini, someone there holding your hand and saying, hey, if you want to ditch the timeouts, but you don't know what to do, here it is. And it's called a time in. And it really focuses on this space that I've created here, which is called our calming corner. And this is in my home, but classes have these all over the world. We're in 44 countries. And what teachers are doing, generally pre-K to 2nd grade, is they're saying to their kids, hey, you know what? We're not only here to learn our ABCs and our 1, 2, 3s, we're here to learn about our emotive selves and relationships and being kind to one another and listening and all what we call the soft skills. And when they commit to putting a calming space in their room, they commit to, instead of punishing and saying, get out of the room, go to the principal's office, you're dysregulated, you've just pushed somebody's book off their desk, they're committed to what's called restorative justice or restorative discipline. And they're committed to saying, hey, there's a breakdown, and talking through breakdowns, which does what? It teaches children relationship skills. And it literally models for children how to manage their big emotions. So when they're dysregulated, instead of punishing them, we see it as a learning opportunity. And the calming space is a safe place kids run to. I have parents send me stories of my child is using it 4 times a day, and they're putting themselves in it. You know, when you think about a timeout, what do you think of? You think of like, you're put in it. You are forced in it. It's forced isolation classically. And so a time in is presented in a totally different way. Kids run to them, not necessarily the first day, but the first day isn't about being put in a time in. The first day is about having fun and exploring all the tools. So I hope that kind of gives you an overview.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so how do we, so you touched a little bit on the purpose and how it's to help talk through emotions and to have, to bring an element of playfulness to understanding our emotional and social selves and for our toddlers. And so I'm curious, how do we go to create one?
Yeah, awesome. So wherever you are in this world, you can create one this moment. And it starts with your intention. And it starts with connecting with your child and saying, you know what? If you've been using timeouts, I think it's a good conversation to have to hit a reset button and create some safety and trust with them in letting them know that you'd like to do something else. And, you know, we teach forgiveness and we teach humility and we teach empathy and kindness by modeling it. And sometimes we as parents need to just flat out apologize, hit a reset button and start over. And so the first step for me is having parents connect with their kids. If they've been using another way, to talk about that and do what's called a reset. Clear with them. Ask them, How did it feel for you when I used to put you in timeout or spank you or whatever the punitive punishments were? And listen and create a sense of safety and trust. Do not model guilt. Do not whip yourself on the back. I'm the worst mom. I can't believe I did that. Your child doesn't need a perfect parent. They need a present parent, a parent who understands we're all human and we make mistakes. So we model starting time ins by just hitting the reset button. And then I like to start playing. So we have a printable that is free on our website, and it's a coloring book. And people can download it and create a little book which goes through all the different ways there are to regulate, right? Drawing, doing a puzzle, reading a book, closing our eyes, breathing. There's 12 different ones. And one way to begin is just color these and talk about them with your kids. And the posters back here literally walk your child through what they might do if they're having a meltdown. So they're, how do I feel? First step is I feel, and they just come over here and they pick which one of these colors are they feeling. And then they say, why might I feel this way? And they share about it, and then they go over to the next step and they pick a couple calming strategies. So they literally just, what can I do? I feel this. What can I do about it? And then they check in again and they say, how do I feel now? Am I feeling better or worse or the same? So it's really just a methodical process of learning to pause, to check in, to connect with another person, put words to your feelings, and move forward, learning from the moment. It's really what it is.
This is so powerful because it is about learning in the moment. It's not something that, it's like, oh, we have to sit down and make special time to teach this, and we have to set aside special time to teach this and that. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're so busy. It's so overwhelming. Where do we start? And it's like, oh no, it's in the moment.
It is in the moment. Such a great distinction. Learning moment, teaching moment, mindful moment. One of my favorite mantras is mistakes help me learn and grow. And if you really set that up in your classroom or your home, when you're faced with a mistake, instead of everybody, you can kind of come to that joyful place of, wait a minute, mistakes help us learn and grow. What are we going to learn from this moment? And it's powerful. One of my favorite little tidbits of research is that, do you know what is the number one most important element to creating focus, to helping a child focus? What do you think it is? Does anybody out there know? I'll be like, I want to know what that is. It's motivation. It's motivation. How are we motivating our kids in those tough moments? Are we making it safe to fail? Are we sending the memo out that mistakes help us learn and grow? Because if we are, kids will run toward the mistakes and say, what is the learning that's happening here? But if we're not, if we're sending out the signal that you're bad and you're wrong and I don't love that about you, they shy away from it, because children are honed in to be cared for because it's wired to their self-preservation. They want to be loved, they want to be accepted, and they want to be cared for. So if they unconsciously start to see in you physical cues and signals that go right to their limbic brain that you are not pleased and you are shunning them and you want to push them away, their very self-preservation is threatened. Their very survival is threatened, and that goes right to the brainstem where they're going to be triggered and you're going to get more misbehavior, not less.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought up this idea of motivation, because it is so important. And that's why these learning moments are so vital, because the thing is that throughout life, like, it's easy to think, oh, in toddlerhood, we're together day in and day out and we're always together. But in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, as children grow up, we spend less and less time with them, and we have less and less influence. The hope is by the time we get to the teen years, we still have some influence. And the thing is, well, first of all, how do we keep that influence? It's through having strong connection, trust, and a bond, but also, so how are they going to make decisions without us right there making the decisions for them. And in the moment when we're looking at timeout as a punishment, we're not allowing any learning to happen from that moment. It's just like, oh, this, it's more of a shutdown moment versus a learning moment. So it really does tie into motivation.
It does. Timeouts work, quote unquote. Define work though. In the short term, parents and educators are fooled into thinking they work because they might alter the short-term behavior. But you have to define the word work. If what you're looking for is learning, learning happens in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is a place we access when we feel safe. And it's a place that's full of circulation and blood flow and gray matter in the brain. We can become very wise and we can apply what we're learning in new ways when we wire that part of the brain. When we only wire a child's behavior out of aversion, out of fear, that is a very different sort of behavioral response. It's called a reactive response. So if I shock a mouse every time they come over to this corner, they might not go in that corner. But has true learning, integrated great wiring and high level learning, it happened in that mouse? No, it's just fear. It's a fear response. So that's what I really want parents out there to sit with. If you're currently using a punitive, and that goes for rewards. Rewards are just the flip side of punishment. And the science is, it was just in the New York Times literally last week, that positive reward-based manipulation, we can call it, or parenting based out of rewards, it's just the flip side of punishment. It works the same way in the child's brain. And what it does is it bypasses the most powerful type of learning, which is intrinsic, right? They are not internally motivated. So we are investing in a relationship. And like you pointed out, when your child, I want you to count how many sentences and how many minutes of communication occur with your teenager or with your average 8-year-old, especially one that goes to school versus homeschooling. How many sentences? You will be shocked when you get an average on that, and when you realize that this time, this toddler time, where we are overwhelmed, right? Where we are overwhelmed as well, is really our point of power to not only learn to regulate ourselves and to practice regulation and mindfulness, but to then depart those skills onto our child. Okay, last point there is it's never too late to start. I have grandparents. I have parents with adult children coming into our community and learning our tools and taking our classes because it really is, the brain is so plastic. And so that's the really encouraging thing. It's great to start young when those wires are just being formed, but it's never too late to rewire or prune those bushes.
Yes. And that's so important to remember, that it's not all or nothing, and it's not, you know, I've caused damage or it's over and we can't change that. I mean, every moment, each and every moment truly is an invitation to begin again. This is what I really believe in life and in the world.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that so powerfully with your community and especially toddler parents, because we're all operating out of our brainstem. Honestly, I look back, I have 4 kids. I look back when my oldest 2 were 2.5 and 5. And I like to think of my life as a piece of paper and a page, and there were no blank spots. Every spot on that page felt full. And if I flipped it over, it felt full on the back side as well. So I didn't have any margins when stress or curveballs of life came at me. There were no margins to write in. And that's my big thing for parents. I want you to know that saying no is the best way to say yes to your life, and to see if you can reclaim at least some little bit of white margins in your life. And it does take time, but if you make that your focus, you can really shift the pressures that you're feeling on a daily basis, and it will translate into new behaviors in your child.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. It's so true. And as we're talking about this, it's making me think a lot about EQ, because, you know, EQ, I feel like we're kind of talking kind of around, or, you know, about EQ. And so I think it's worth kind of defining, because it's a buzzword that we hear a lot. And so, you know, really, what is this relationship between EQ and kids learning to regulate their emotions and their behavior?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. Literally, nurturing emotional intelligence in 3 words is what we do at Generation Mindful. So I can bottom line this down to 2 words for you. Okay. Emotional intelligence are the things we see in the world and the things we do in the world. So easy. So it's self-awareness and awareness of others. Those are the 2 things we see. The 2 things we do are self-care and then our social skills, right? So the things we see in the world and the things we do in the world. So those are a set of skills. There are 4. And then our ability to not only have that skill set, but apply them in life, like when the tire hits the road, right? When things are really happening, that is our ability to regulate. Social, emotional regulation. To me, it's an application of skills. The application of my emotional intelligence becomes my ability to regulate socially and emotionally. Does that make sense? So a child, you might see a child model self-awareness. I know that it's wrong to take a cookie out of the cookie jar. I am 4 years old. I've been told not to take a cookie out of the cookie jar. I know not to do that. But when nobody's in the room or I think nobody's watching, I do not have the ability to regulate the impulse control it takes to not take a cookie out of the cookie jar. So parents do not understand necessarily developmentally it's appropriate for a child to sneak a cookie out of the cookie jar because they're listening to the brain that says, that is yummy, you want that, go get that. And they're just learning to filter the impulse against this moral, higher moral, what is right, what is wrong. So parents get really upset and they think that this is an immoral action or immoral child. And what we resist persists, so we can really create an issue of saying, oh, you're a liar, you're a scoundrel, you're a bad boy. And we literally wire the brain to think it is those things when truly it is none of those things. It's smart, it's a go-getter, it's a leader, and it is a 4-year-old who hasn't wired for impulse control. So we definitely discipline that action, but we don't negatively reinforce it. Let me tell you how, because people say, well, how the heck do you do that? Mm-hmm. Mistakes help me learn and grow. What happened? I stole a cookie from the cookie jar. How did I feel? It was awesome. It was yummy. What I thought, said, and did. And then what I learned, well, mom came in and said, no, those are for dessert. And now I don't get cookies this whole week, if that is the natural consequence in your home. They're learning from that moment. And next time I'm going to not have the cookie because I now know that those are for dessert, not for snack, right? So you're going through a worksheet or just a conversation. The worksheet can be in your head, you know, but I did have a mom send me a little note today with her 4-year-old she was in her time and space, and she said it was really, really tough, and he was struggling until she got out her sheet. And she said it just crystallized it for him, and he started coloring. So just know your child, know how they learn, and pull in all the tools. And I want you to understand that the emotional intelligence can then become a skill set that they can lean into during those hard moments, and then it will help them regulate not only at home, but at school with friends. When someone says, hey, let's smoke pot, let's go get some drink, alcohol, let's go drive a car under the influence. That's when those skills get tested. And that's where it really matters.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I thank you so much for drawing the link between the skills and managing and regulating behavior. And I'm also really glad that you brought up impulsive behavior, because toddlers are, especially young children, preschool, they're very impulsive. It's just where their brain development is at. And so understanding where your child's at developmentally is very helpful and a very big point. Understanding that toddlers are inherently impulsive is a very important point to keep in mind.
Yes, thank you for underlining it. You can circle it 8 times. And again, the science says we're going to overestimate our child's abilities. I mean, I remember the day I brought an infant home and I looked at my 2.5-year-old and I said, oh my gosh, I've been treating you like a baby. You're this humongous kid. Yeah. All of a sudden she graduated from my baby to my big, in my head, this 2.5-year-old huge girl, big girl. And I can't tell you how many parents have that filter, in place, and it just shifts on a moment how we see our child. So understand that science says that we are prone to overestimating developmentally our children's abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really common in toddlerhood because all of a sudden they are so much more independent. As a baby, toddler, babies are really dependent on us for so many things. But once they reach toddlerhood, they're more mobile, they're more verbal, and generally more independent. So on the outside, it seems like they're older and that they are, they can understand a lot more, which they definitely can. However, we don't see how emotionally dependent they still are on us because that's what's beneath the surface. On the surface, we just see their independence. And so I think that it's hard to see the emotional dependence be below the surface.
Absolutely true. Absolutely.
And so I'm curious, what are some common mistakes or some things to look out for when you start incorporating a calming corner?
Yes. I think the biggest mistake is to pretend it's a timeout. Like, oh, I'm going to manipulate my child. I'm going to, people say like, did it work? If you're in the mindset of like, did it work? Like it's a trick. It's a trick. It's a fun little puppet, no, this is connection. This is relationship. This isn't a trick that we do or something we pull over on our kid to make them. This is literally the science of connection. So don't wait till it's broken, right, to go fix it. Give your child the ability to have an understanding of the space, how it works, to practice all of the regulatory things, and to fall in love with them before they need to lean on them. Because if they're in the brainstem and they're triggered and you're whipping out this new fun tool, they're not in the mindset to be able to learn and process what you're giving them. But if they're in a happy place and they're connected, safe place, when they need these tools, they're going to run to them and they're going to feel safe in them. That would be my biggest mistake, is that people don't first shift their own mindset away from timeout and punitive to connection and time in. So it's not controlling our children, okay? It's connecting.
So when we're looking at these challenges and this mistake, it's really a lot comes down to mindset and how we shift in our mind the purpose of the calming corner. And I think an important point that you're making, that it's not just for the challenging moments. It can be for any moment and all moment, because really what it is, it's a place of connection, a place of learning, and a place to build a relationship.
It is exactly. It's a skill set, and it's built around relationship. And that's where attachment theory and attachment science is so important. And do you know, eye contact is literally the number one thing related to self-esteem in children. And it starts they're very, very young. And then the amount that we speak to our children, the words that we use, the number of words we use, relates to their emotional intelligence and their intellectual quotient, their IQ and their EQ. How many words are we using? Are we talking to our children? Are we looking at our children? The science of relationship is so basic, but it doesn't make it easy. Just because something is simple doesn't make it easy. And so my job is to take the science and make it so much fun and so practical that it's something that we are wired to do every day so that it can become a habit. And we know a lot about what does it take for something to become a habit. You need to do it over 45 days. There's some research out there saying more like in the 60s and 70s for something to be wired in, but certainly more than daily for a month. Okay, so if you're going to eat differently or drink water, 32 or 64 ounces a day, it's going to take you some training wheels set in place to make you do that new thing. And if you have good training wheels in place, accountability, after a month or two, you're going to be like, this is not even hard for me to drink water. Why did I think it was hard to drink water? So we're doing at Generation Mindful is we're making connection a habit. And we are your training wheels. And it is fun. It is not expensive. And you will run to it just like your child. And in a couple months, you'll be like, dang, I'm taking my calming corner on the road. You know, I've got this little guy in my head, you know, and we're at the restaurant and things are heading south. I'm going here and I'm not even in my space. That is my dream.
That's awesome. I love it. And could you just bring us through an example? Say you're in a moment with your toddler and it's becoming, you know, a challenging moment. You're thinking, okay, like it might be a moment where previously you might have done a timeout or some other type of punitive consequence, something like this. How can you use this corner in the heat of the moment?
Oh my gosh, I have so many.
So I know,
I'm like, my brain is like, I'll just pick one of the most recent ones. I mean, literally I get 1 to 3 stories a day with pictures and I cry. Like I read these and I'm so moved at how you all are bringing the tools to life. These are tools, you bring them to life. So this one mom, she's working in her office. She's a homeschooling mom. Her kids are girls are out there, 2 girls. One is like 4 and one is the big sister, like 6. The 6-year-old has special needs. The mom defined as special needs. She mentioned ADHD and I don't know what else, but that's just how she described her. And she said that the little sister came in just bawling, crying, just a handful. And she, you know, wanted to react. She went under the chair and hid. And the mom was irritated, right? She's trying to work. She's like, what is this disruption? But they had done the time in space setup the day before. She had read all the materials and she's like, I'm not going to punish her. I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond. So she asked what's going on. And the little girl was like heaving and crying. And she said, she won't listen to me. And she had felt so sad. It took her a while to be able to put words to it. But she felt sad because she had wanted to play a certain way or do a certain thing and expressed it to her big sister. And her big sister wasn't in the space to take that in. And so the mom was able to get out this little guy right here. She had it on hand. And she said her little daughter could not get the words out. But she was able to point to here. Before she was able to then express, I was sad because I had an idea I wanted to play this and my sister wouldn't listen to me. So once the little girl was able to touch this, they were able to hug and then they were able to go to the actual calming space with big sister and regulate together. And all she did was active listening. She asked her daughter again to share what happened for her in front of the big sister. And then without making the big sister wrong, she turned to the big sister and she said, what was it like for you? And the big sister shared how she was doing something and she was irritated because she felt like she was coming in on her thing, right? And guess what? Nobody got punished. Nobody got made wrong. And all 3 human beings in the space got a chance to wire the prefrontal cortex. Instead of going to anger and irritation or sadness, right? These 2, which are negative states in the brain, they got wired for connection and they moved into their calm and they eventually moved into their connected happy place through relationship. That would be one example.
I love it. It's a great example. I just wanted us to have like, you know, how does this look in the moment? And that's
Thank you. It was a long example. I could probably give you a lot of short ones. One is a kid came to the dinner table, couldn't bring her stuffed animal, and her mom and dad are like, no toys at the table. And she started crying and she goes, I need to go calm myself. I need to go take a time in. She was 3. The mom was like, what? She came back 5 minutes later and was fine. And she did it all on her own. I actually have a photo of the little girl reading her book. The mom went over, was like, what is going on? Took a picture. They had actually been using this space for a month. And this is how children use it all on their own.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome because they're making the connections and they're learning. And so that's where it really ties us back into this intrinsic learning, this intrinsic motivation, and
they're motivated. And then it's a happy place. It's a safe place. So they're self-prescribing.
Yep.
No child ever was like proud, like, I took a time out. And like dad gets home or mom gets home from work and they're like, I got put in time out 4 times today with a big smile. But they run up to their parents and they say, I took 3 time-ins today. And they talk about what they learned. They're proud. They're motivated.
So cool. I love it. I love it. So I'm just curious what advice you have to parents who are just starting down this journey and that, are thinking, oh, maybe I want to shift from punitive to more positive parenting, or I would like to create a calming corner. And so what advice do you have for parents who are just trying to see where to start?
I would say make connection a habit. Make it, and how do we do that? We make it a ritual. So do not move into overwhelm mode, because you know where that lives, right up here, right? We're overwhelmed, we're exhausted, we're guilty, we're angry, we're angry at ourselves. No, that's not where you want. That's not where you're powerful. Go into your green brain where you're calm. Think of one playful ritual to connect with your child or yourself, and do it every day. That's it. One thing, as simple as pulling a mantra card together, or setting the breakfast table, or juicing together, or making a smoothie together, or opening the blinds and saying, let the sun shine in, whatever it is. It can take 3 seconds, but make it your thing. And it will bring joy. It will bring connection, and it'll make your brain want to do it again. And that's all it takes.
Oh, that is so powerful. I love it. It's just those tiny, tiny steps, those building blocks that take us where we want to go.
They do. Exactly.
So I know our time's coming to a close, and you have a gift that you'd like to offer our audience. Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, we have something really cool called Feelings Bingo. You get these little markers, and it's a printable, and it comes with instructions. And it'll come with a number of printed feeling cards, which it just looks like a bingo sheet. This one's printed in black and white. I recommend printing them in color and laminating them. And it will teach your as young as 3-year-old how to recognize and name 6 basic emotions, right? So what does a happy face look like? And when did they last feel happy? What does a sad face look like? And when did they last feel sad? It opens up all these great conversations, and it's all done in the context of just playing bingo, right? So I hope they enjoy that.
Absolutely. I love it. That's great. It really, it's a great place to start. It's an awesome, wonderful place to start with really learning the emotions.
Absolutely. And I'd love to give you all a coupon if you're interested in trying out the Time In space. It's called the Time In Toolkit. We'd love to have you join our community, Generation Mindful, and bringing these tools to life. So we'll make sure to give you a nice $5 off coupon to make that a little bit easier for you. And it will include free shipping in the US. So.
Oh, that's so generous. Thank you so much. And also I wanted to ask you, I see all these really fun animals beside you. They're so adorable. Who are these guys?
These little guys are our plush line called the Snuggle Buddies. And they actually come with a lot of technology built in. They bring the peacemakers to life. So if you get the Time In Toolkit, you'll get these mindfulness cards, and they feature 7 little animals, and they're our peacemaker pals. And so the Snuggle Buddies are for kids to hug, because hugging is regulating. And then inside of them are the 4 mood groups represented by these 4 what we call mood emojis. There's our calm is our green, our red BAM symbol is our angry, scared, our blue teardrop is our sad, and then our yellow happy face is our happy feeling. So the same 4 moods that we talked about here, we are connecting with our kids every night at bed, or if it's a morning meeting at school, and we are saying what color I feel red, or I feel green, or I feel yellow, blue. And if it's at nighttime, my children and I have been playing this game for 6 years. We hold we say the word like sad, and then we share a story from our day when we felt that feeling. So these Snuggle Buddies are in the world now, and launched via Kickstarter in September, and they're available at Generation Mindful. So we'd love to have you, either 1 is all you need, or you can collect all 7.
Oh, they're so adorable. I love them. And I love that they have, a purpose beyond just being huggable and cute. That I love that there's a message and a learning moment built into them.
They do. And each one has its own theme. Like little lion here is about balance, and dolphin is peace, red bear's power, violet the elephant is forgiveness. So each one has a theme. Owl is intuition. So they come with a little bit more technology and centered around bringing that theme into your child's life. I call it a superpower. It's their super peacemaking powers, right? There's 7 of them. So it's just fun for kids to have a tangible, playful way to think about how are they embodying power and joy and balance and things like peace in their lives.
Oh, it's so great. I love it. Well, how can our audience find out more about you and your work and Generation Mindful?
Sure. Probably the easiest way is to go to our website, genmindful.com, GENMINDFUL.com. And we're very active on Facebook and Instagram. We have a great community there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your passion and your wisdom with us. It's been really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devin. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.